blood, come the prince that was promised, and his will be disarmed ice and fire.
Welcome back, Watchers Beyond the Wall. My name is Monica, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to a Song of Ice and Fire content, and a little bit of whatever is on my mind. Here, we deep dive and overanalyze re-watching shows and movies over and over again to understand what the writer is trying to tell us. Without further ado, brace yourselves for rewatch. The height of the Valyrian Freehold. At the height of its power, the Freehold stretched over most of Essos, west of the Bone Mountains. Many of the numerous cities were connected by dragon roads. The free cities itself ruled the daughters of Valyria and were spread across western Essos. Volantis and Tyrosh began as military outposts.
For the first century of its existence, Volantis was little more than a military outpost, established to protect the borders of the Valyrian Empire, with no inhabitants save the soldiers of its garrison. From time to time, dragon lords descended to take refreshment or meet with envoys from the Rhoynar cities upriver,
while Mirn and Pentos were forged by merchants in Andal territory. Dragon lords established Lys as a pleasure retreat. Volantis stands as the southeastern bulwark against the free cities, positioned eastward of the disputed lands and sprawling across one of the four mouths of Rhoyne.
The heart of Old Volantis is the city within the city, an immense labyrinth of ancient palaces, courtyards, towers, temples, cloisters, bridges, and cellars, all contained within the great oval of the Black Walls, raised by the Freehold of Valyria in the first flush of its youthful expansion,
where the river encourages within the summer sea. To its north flows the river Valina, while the neighboring cities of Valantheres, Valazar, Selharis lie disputed, nestled between other dominions within Volantis, extending control over the Rhoyne up to the tributary river Sahoys. Volantis also claims territory over the Orange Shore to the city's west, with the remains of Shanmei lying in a similar direction.
Blessed with a magnificent natural harbour and an ideal location at the mouth of the Rhoyne, Volantis began to grow rapidly. Homes and shops and inns spread up the east bank of the river and into the hills beyond the Black Walls.
The climate of Volantis bears the signs of a hot and humid atmosphere, while the air hangs heavy with oppressive heat. It's also like this south and east of the river. Streets drip with heat. Along the shore, a unique collected smell of fish merchants, flowers, elephant dung, and other atmospheres of the ages. Even in the nights, you could not get relief of the heat. It was still oppressive. As a boosting city port, Volantis boasts a vast, deep harboring ideal situation on the local traffic. It was expanded layout spanned the mouth of the Rhoyne, stretching across hills and marshlands of both the planks of the river and the older vasts to the western and eastern shores.
Ancient and glorious, Old Volantis, as the city is often named, sprawls across one of the four mouths of the Rhoyne, where that mighty river flows into the summer sea. The older districts of the city lie upon the eastern banks, the newer on the west, but even the newest eras of Volantis are many centuries old. The two halves of the city are linked by the Long Bridge.
New developments linking with the Long Bridge. Guarding the eastern ports of Volantis stands its imposing black walls, a mountain of awe and splendor within black dragon statues regarding of Valyria's craftsmanship.
These seamless walls are fused black dragonstone, harder than steel or diamond, stand in mute testimony to Volantis' origins as a military outpost.
Raising almost 200 feet high. Enclosed within the fortress like a barrier lies Old Volantis, a labyrinth of sprawling shops, temples, and palaces. The Temple of the Lord of Light, which prominent among the structures, rivaling that of the Great Sept of Baelor in King's Landing.
Many of the old blood of Volantis still keep the old gods of Valyria, but their faith is found primarily within the black walls. Without, the red god R'hllor is favored by many, especially among the slaves and freedmen of the city. The Temple of the Lord of Light in Volantis is said to be the greatest in all the world.
The Long Bridge, a marvel of Valyria's grandeur, spans the Rhoyne, connecting cities' eastern and western harbors. Adorned with carvings of mythical beasts, the roadways support a bustling awe through the shops and dwellings, while the center spans several macabre displays of executed criminals. Within Volantis, a ragged social hierarchy prevails, with the privilege of old blood, descendants of the ancient Valyrian bloodlines, renowned within the Black Walls, wielding incredible influence.
Only those who can trace their ancestry back to Old Valyria are allowed to dwell within the Black Walls. No slave, freedman, or foreigner is permitted to set foot within, without the express invitation of a scion of the old blood.
Free-born citizens are eligible for voting rights based on property they own, maintaining a structure hierarchy within the society, while traveling on foot is beneath most classes and traveling via palanquin or hafes are most notable. The practice of tattooing occurred amongst the freeborn, serving as a badge of honor, symbolizing the nobility within battles and recording both personal accomplishments. Yet, despite the leader system within Volantis, cities remain divided within the political hierarchy of the Old Blood within Eastern Caves, and leading the western side marginally undefended within the political hierarchy. Religious refugees founded Lorvis, Corvus, and Offa. Asirius was founded as a colony near the kingdom of Sava. Bravos was founded by slaves who rebelled against their Valyrian overlords, and the secret city did not accept the Valyrian rule.
Bravos was founded by slaves, whilst Volantis is built upon their bones. Bravos' greatest might is at sea, whilst that of Volantis is upon the land. Yet both remain formidable powers. Their history is deeply marked by the freehold of Valyria.
Sana, an ancient kingdom flourishing against the river of San and its tributaries, once a part of the Silver Sea, ruled by the Fisher Queen and distinct legend, descended from the legendary king Hassandamanre, the Long Man, as the Sanori call themselves, claiming lineage from the Fisher Queen, merging within neighboring people like Zeniri's Sakorba and though allies or conquerors, formerly a Singer people. Establishing city-states along the Sanroy River, the Soiroin granted a renewed for their skilled at using chariots in warfare. Despite their prideful nature and having discourse within conflict against the Carthi, they eventually drove them southwards, between Harazard to the Bay Mountain. The Carthi's decline and the rise of Karth as a vital trading hub between the Gerald Sea, connecting with the expansion of the Dothraki, leading to the fall of the Carthi cities and the expanse of Karth. Their zenith, the Salnori engaged in extensive trading between Valyria, Et, and Ashai, navigating through the Shivering Sea and reached Ide and thousands of lands within the Maas. The clash between the Giscari Empire and the Dothraki bonds within some time between the wars of Gis and the Valyrians, initially aligning with the Valyrians, but later supporting both sides in the Fourth Giscari War. Despite this inconvenience, the conflict of the Valyrians, they never sought out to conquer the Sonoris, focusing their influence more within trading and internal rivals. Sonoris served as a distinguished trading partners and a buffer against the coming of the Dothraki from the northeast, remaining an independent kingdom from the Valyrians, just showing a greater advantage than conquering them. Other cities and towns founded or conquered by the Freehold were governed by arcanes of the Freehold of Valyria.
For much of its early history, Valentis benefited from the trade between Valyria and the Rhoynar, waxing ever more prosperous and powerful, while Sarhoy, the ancient and beautiful Rhoynish city that had previously dominated their commerce, suffered a corresponding decline.
The Valyria Peninsula reached Oriths and Certinia, near Valantis, where built Serhares, Volanthiris, and Valathor. South of the Painted Mountains were Borash, Mountaris, Tolith, while located in Slaver's Bay, where Valas of the Sun for Isles, Cedar, and Iveria. The greatest monuments of the old Empire of Gis were Askapor, Marine, and Yunkai. Other Giscari settlements were Goze, or the sun on the Isle of Cedar, Vatka and Vara, and what is now known as Vizavad and Vizmatad. It is unknown if New Gith is located beyond the ruins of Old Gith, beyond the reaches of Valyria. South of the Summer Sea, the Freehold also controlled Gothic of the Island of Tears, and also the three fallen colonies of Baltric Point in Sothorisle.
With the destruction of the Rhoynar, Valyria soon achieved complete domination of the western half of Essos, from the Narrow Sea to Slaver's Bay, and from the Summer Sea to the Shivering Sea. Slaves poured into the Freehold and were quickly dispatched beneath the 14 flames to mine the precious gold and silver the freeholders loved so well.
Valyrian cities of unknown location include Apralti, Draconis, Mesouthiel, and Ryle. Amongst the ruined cities of the Rhoynar were Alnoi, Corin, Cornjoy, Nathstar, Soinoi, and Sothhold. It is widely believed that the Valyrians once ventured as far as Old Town, engaging in trade with an elder race before the first men arrived in Westeros. As noted by Jellicoe, Sept of Both posted that the Valyrians reached Westeros squabbling between a prophecy foreseeing the doom of the original of the land beyond the Narrow Sea. But another Archmaester believes a tragic event happened where they shunned Westeros, although Dragonstone was established, so not all of them agreed on this shunning.
Perhaps in preparation for their crossing of the Narrow Sea, the Valyrians also established their westernmost outpost on the isle that would come to be known as Dragonstone, some 200 years before the Doom. No king opposed them, and though the local lords of the Narrow Sea made some effort to resist it, the strength of Valyria was too great.
Approximately 200 years before the Doom of Valyria, the Freehold expanded its reach to the island of Dragonstone in the Narrow Sea, establishing a stronghold there, depending on little squabble for the other locational lords in Blackwater Bay. Serving as a western point outpost of the Freehold, Dragonstone became a key faceted location.
Dragonstone had been the westernmost outpost of Valyrian power for 2 centuries. Its location athwart the Gullet gave its lords a stranglehold on Blackwater Bay, and enabled both the Targaryens and their close allies, the Valyrians of Driftmark, a lesser house of Valyrian descent, to fill their coffers of the passing trade.
In 114 BC, Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Aenys Targaryen, experienced a pathetic dream, a vision of the foresight cataclysmic event known as the Doom of Valyria. In response, House Targaryen departed their homeland and settled on Dragonstone, a decision criticized by the other Dragon Lords as an act of being a coward. Nearby territories, such as Driftmark, had also been claimed by House Velaryon, a lesser Valyrian house, while Claw Isle fell under the rule of the Valyrian Sultagard. The Doom of Valyria. Daenerys experienced a powerful, pathetic dream known as a vision of the Doom of Valyria. Within the fiery destruction and ruin of Valyria,
Lord Roderick tapped the book with a long nail. See here, Marwyn claims to have found 3 pages of signs and portents, visions written down by the maiden daughter of Aenar Targaryen before the doom came to Valyria.
In 114 BC, her father, Aenar Targaryen, fled with the fear of her vision, leaving behind the freehold of Valyria and relocating his family along the position of Dragonstone, an island north off of the coast of Westeros.
Except for Aenar Targaryen, his children, and his dragons, who had fled to Dragonstone and so escaped the Doom.
The Doom of Valyria, also known simply as the Doom, was a catastrophic event of unknown origins that led to the downfall of the peak of Valyria's freehold.
And then, unexpected to all, save perhaps Aenar Targaryen and his maiden daughter, Daenerys the Dreamer, the Doom came to Valyria,
which had nearly survived 5 millennia. Through this catastrophic event occurred a century before Aegon's conquest of Westeros, around 102 BC. Spells, knowledge, and other history records were lost in the wake of the Doom, with a catastrophic period known as a Century of Blood. Accompanying them were 5 dragons, including Balerion, which will be known as Balerion the Black Dread. While the Doom eventually fell, Valyria, 12 years later, House Targaryen emerged as the sole family of dragon riders. Other houses of the Narrow Sea that have Valyrian-descended blood include the Velaryons of Driftmark and the Celticars of Claw Isle. On the day of the Doom, every hill for 500 miles exploded.
To this day, no one knows what caused the Doom. Most say that it was a natural cataclysm, a catastrophic explosion caused by the eruption of all 14 flames together,
filling the air with ash and smoke and fire, even killing dragons. Earthquakes destroyed palaces, temples, and towers, while lakes bubbled over with acid. The 14 flames of the fiery mountains of Valyria.
The one thing that can be said for certain is that it was a cataclysm such as the world had never seen. The ancient mighty freehold, home to dragons and to sorcerers of unrivaled skill, was shattered and destroyed within hours. It was written that every hill for 500 miles split asunder,
sent molten rocks 1,000 feet up in the air, and red clouds rained down dragon glass. The Valyrians, once humble shepherds on the peninsula of Valyria, witnessed a dramatic transportation upon the discovery of dragons nestled within the 14 flames. The fiery beasts were now tamed and used as warfare, raging a war that withstanded 5 millennia. This war forged the freehold of Valyria and made the Valyrians ascend to unparalleled power. The Valyrians used their power to enslave and to conquer, using this as a dangerous weapon. Some say the Doom of Valyria was a cosmic thrall within the gods, showing the Valyrians that their power did not match the beasts within them that they had conquered. The zenith of the Valyrian Freehold's power came to a cataclysmic collapse thus known as the Doom.
Some septons, less wise, claim that the Valyrians brought the disaster on themselves for their promiscuous belief in 100 gods and more.
The 14 flames of Valyria erupted, earthquakes shattering settlements, mountains, flames warging on uncontrollably, which even the dragons couldn't escape. The Valyrian peninsula was now left a shattered ruin. Once connected with the long Isle of Summer was now a blackened, charred, smoky remain. Many people speculate on how the doom even occurred.
A handful of maesters, influenced by fragments of the work of Septon Bath, hold that Valyria had used spells to tame the 14 flames for thousands of years.
Some say natural causes. Some say that the volcanic eruption was just nature balancing out. Others believe that there was an enforced struggle within the Valyrian magic, losing grip on oneself. Political machinations had also been theorized,
and that when at last those spells faltered, the cataclysm became inevitable.
as some dragon lords grappled for power. Maybe, possibly, mages manipulated this in their favor, but one let out of hand, and a domino effect occurred, killing everyone in its wake.
Of these, some argue that it was the curse of Garin the Great, at last coming to fruition.
The cataclysmic infracted the Valyrian peninsula around a surrounded, but the fragment landmass project southwards from Essos into the Summer Sea, serving as a narrowing point of Valyrian Freehold, and hosted the illustrious city of Valyria.
To the north, the ground splintered and collapsed and fell in on itself, and an angry sea came boiling in. The proudest city in all the world was gone in an instant. The fabled empire vanished in a day.
Because the doom was so horrific within the fiery and melted lava, centuries past, a widespread collisions had occurred, with landmass shifting, creating different vanishing points. The sea had changed, and they dubbed it the Smoking Sea.
To fill the air with ash and smoke and fire so hot and hungry that even the dragons in the sky were engulfed and consumed. Great rents opened in the earth, swallowing palaces, temples, and entire towns. Lakes boiled or turned to acid. Mountains burst. Fiery fountains spewed molten rock 1,000 feet into the air, and red clouds rained down dragon glass and the black blood of demons.
Also shaping other islands, encompassing areas such as the Sea of Sight, the land of the Long Summer Isles, Oris, Tyria, and Valyria itself had bits vanish through the Summer Sea. Valyria itself was separated in smaller islands, and nobody knows the true size of its mass. Structures were lost, and tsunamis took many islands. With the century of blood following the doom of Valyria was a power struggle not seen ever before. Lasting a century, the devastation known as Valyria left a power vacuum in Essos.
What followed in the sudden vacuum was chaos. The time of the dragons in Essos was at an end.
According to history, Arion, a dragon rider who was also known to be visiting Quaha, proclaimed himself to be the first emperor of Valyria and rose forces for Quaharis with his dragon, and his army of 30,000 men marched to reclaim the remains of Valyria, but none were seen ever again.
That a visiting dragon lord, Arion, raised forces from the Quahoric colonists and proclaimed himself the first emperor of Valyria.
Volantis, the mightiest of the 9 free cities, claimed Valyria's empire. Meanwhile, the Dothraki rode out of the east, sacking and burning towns and cities in their way, leading to the devastation of several realms. As Valyria's first daughters, they rallied support, proclaiming themselves as the rightful successors of the Dragon Lords. and they so-called targets.
Volantis, the mightiest of the free cities, quickly laid claim to Valyria's mantle. Men and women of noble Valyrian blood, though not dragon lords, called for war upon the other cities.
Led a cause that lasted only 2 generations, calling upon war upon the cities and taking control over Lys and Meereen, and claiming the southwestern reach of Rhoyne. Resistance began when Volantis attempted to take control of Turosh. However, in the end, all of the free cities, save for Lenneth, either rebelled against Volantis or joined the allegiance against the Valentines. Pentos gave Turosh aid to help against the rebellion, while Meereen and Lys rebelled against Volantis as well. Quaha and Nero made an alliance against Volantis and destroyed much of the Volantine fleet controlled by Rhoyne of Dagger Lake. The Trident Wrath had been witnessed when Braavos sent aid of a Sea Lord of Braavos, sending 100 ships to help in Lys's aid. Argilac Durandon, the Storm King from Westeros, led a host into the disputed lands where he defeated an army of Atlanteans attempting to retake Meereen. Pentos and Tyrosh along approached the long-remaining Dragon Lords, House Targaryen of Dragonstone and a young Aegon Targaryen of joined the alliance against Volantis. Mounted on his dragon Balerion, he flew to Lys, where a voluntary fleet was approaching a siege and an invasion, and he set the fleet ablaze. When Volantis sends a fleet to reclaim Valyria, the fleet disappears in the smoking sea. The Dothraki also attack, weakening Volantis' eastern territory. In the end, a second political party, the Elephants, seized control over Volantis, where the Tigers had formed a conquest. The Elephants favored trade and peace. After having had power for so long, after a century following Valyria's doom, the Tigers were dispatched by the Elephants, rising again. And even since 2 centuries of the 3 triarchs of Volantis have been elephants each year. While Volantis had been very much powerful of the free cities shortly after the doom, the Age of Blood.
The fall of the great Sonori kingdoms took less than a century, even as the free cities of the West became locked in a savage struggle for domination during what became known as the Century of Blood.
And the century of it left them broken, bankrupt, and depopulated. Fightings occurred over disputed lands, where the free companies were born in the struggle of power. The centuries of battle within the disputed lands, even in present day, where Tyrosh, Mirosh, and Lys go to war over the disputed borders. The rise of the Dothraki. Because of the power vacuum left by the Doom,
For the Dothraki are a young race, and it was only since the Doom destroyed Valyria that their Khalasars came to dominate these lands, sweeping out of the east with fire and steel to conquer and destroy the ancient cities that once thrived here.
the Dothraki came from the eastern of the grasslands of a central part of Essos, exploding into war.
During the years that followed the Doom, the riders of the eastern steppes, hitherto divided into 80 quarrelsome tribes, at perpetual war with one another,
acting on the advice of his mother, Dashi Kal Mango, uniting the 60 Khalasars and forcing them to march west,
had finally been united under a single leader, a Dothraki Khal called Mengo. Counseled by his mother, the purported witch queen Doshi, Khal Mengo compelled the other nomads to accept his rule, extinguishing or enslaving those who refused.
The tall men of the kingdom of Sana ignored the threat that the Dothraki posed, instead tempting them to use them in their own war. Mango accepted all the tall men, uniting them and returning in their help, but he took their lands.
The tall men ignored the threat from the east for far too long, even as the Khalasars began to raid across their eastern marches. Some of their kings even sought to use the Dothraki in their own wars, offering them gold and slaves and other gifts to fight against their rivals.
Conquering them, as well as burning their farms, fields, towns, and leaving their lands to return in the wild state they had once been in.
Khal Mengo took these gifts gladly, then took the conquered lands as well, burning fields and farms and towns to return the grasslands to their wild state.
The Khalasar of Khal Mango, Mango's son, destroyed Salfathes, slew the men, and took its women and children to be sold as slaves. Kultik and Cluin both claimed Sakar's ruins, which restored the conflict between Sanroy cities. 6 years following Sanroy's devastation, Catholic was destroyed as well. Dorthro followed a dozen years later.
It must not be thought that the kingdom of Sarnor was the only victim of the Horse Lords. The Valyrian colony Assyria, sometimes remembered as the Lost Free City, was similarly overwhelmed. Today its ruins are known to the Dothraki as Vez Kadoch, the City of Corpses.
But then Khal Maro had been slain and replaced Khal Horo. Following the death of Khal Horo 3 years later, his Khalasar separated into 3 smaller bands, who later conquered smaller villages. Sanash, Kith, and Hornith fell as well. Monash held on for 6 years. Though the cities endured, were forced to eat their own dead.
In the years that followed, they strove to outdo one another by conquering ever wider territories, destroying the cities of the grasslands, enslaving their peoples, and carrying their broken gods back to Vez Dothrak to testify to their victories.
To survive. When the cities could endure no more, the men had to kill their own wives and children to keep them from falling into the Dothraki's grasp.
One rider, and alone, a scout. He was one who rode before the Khalasar to find the game and the good green grass, and sniff out foes wherever they might hide. If he found her there, he would kill her, rape her, or enslave her. At best, he would send her back to the crones of the Dash Khalin, where good Khaleesi were supposed to go when their Khals had died.
Following the fall of Mordosh, the Serhanis united against their enemy, forcing the Dothraki in a fallen grass halfway to the Sanori and the ruins of Kathnir. The so-called Field of Crows ended in Dothraki victory, as a fortnight later the Sanori were taken and put to the torch. With the century of blood drawing to a close, the remain of the Sanori cities fell in the Dothraki hands. The last to fall were Sanith, though it had been mostly maintained and adopted through the time of Khal Zago and his Caliban traveling through it. The Valyrian colony Aziriel fell to the Dothraki, as it did Idid, town of Ide. As its inhabitants abandoned the city, the Dothraki renamed the city Vas Idid, meaning the city of the cowards.
The people of the Khalasar had welcomed the chance to recover from the ravages of the Red Waste, but now that they were plump and rested once again, they began to grow unruly. Dothraki were not accustomed to staying long in one place. They were a warrior people, not made for cities.
In the Red Waste, Karth towns and cities were destroyed as well, including the city of Colin and now known as Viskala. The small cities known by the Dothrakis, named of Visovek, where a great number of slaves were taken by the Dothraki, and the small Carthene town now known by the Dothraki as the name of Vis Shirosi also fell to the Horse Lord. Only Koth survived, due to its triple wall. The Giskuri hill cities, Hazarod, where Dothraki sold slaves acquiring of the Surhilly cities, were later destroyed by the Dothraki as well. And any remaining towns that the Dothraki later renamed were also destroyed. Although the Dothraki were conquerors, they never traveled near Yunkai or near the Bone Mountains and a city known as Vazivizi.
If the milkman thought her such a savage, she would dress the part for them. When she went to the stables, she wore faded sand-silk pants and woven grass sandals. Her small breast moved freely beneath a painted Dothraki vest, and a curved dagger hung from her medallion belt. Jiqui had braided her hair Dothraki fashion, and fastened a silver bell to the end of the braid. "I have won no victories," she tried telling her handmaid when the bell tinkled softly.
Also conquered by the Dothraki were Yenashur near the Bone Mountains and a city now known as Viszidi, a formal settlement of the kingdom of the Eifelquadon. The grasslands of central Essos had been now claimed to the Dothraki, known as the Dothraki Sea, following the expansion of the Dothraki borders. Tamen, a Dothraki call, rode west of Ath on one of the free cities. The Koroi had prepared for the Dothraki by settling their walls and hiring a free company. As an afterthought, they paid a man from Askapor to buy 3,000 trained Unsullied soldiers that would guard their city. The Dothraki reached Ath before the Unsullied arrived and defeated Queeth Toth references. When the Dothraki attempted to sack the gates the following day, 12,000 Dothraki screamers found themselves facing off with 3,000 Unsullied defending the gate. The Unsullied withstood 13 sieges, killing most of the Dothraki and including their great Khal, Talthemer. On the 14th day, they had a new call, and leading the surviving, they sacked the gates and surrendered. As a result, the 13th of Quaha, the city, is mainly guarded by a company of Unsullied. Aftermath. Most of Essos was largely in chaos after the Doom. During the centuries of blood, Volantis unsuccessfully renowned their heirs for Old Valyria, ultimately waging war with the Free Cities, and some dragon riders in the Lys and Tarosh surviving the Doom, but they were soon killed along with their dragons. The Dragon Lord Ares remained himself as the Emperor, but was lost during his voyage back to Old Valyria. Tommen II Lannister, King of the Rock, vanished while sailing through Valyria, and Brightthorn and Gerald Lannister also disappeared, searching for Brightthorn. It is said that traveling through the ruins of Valyria will leave you vanished to time, and even the most hardened sailors shudder at the thought of sailing through the ruins. Many believe that Valyria's secrets, such as magic, wielding the ferocious beasts that are known as dragons, were lost, and many believe that Old Valyria is now cursed, with the depravities that they had practiced are now lost, and Valyria itself is cursed. Many of the Valyrian secrets, such as magic and the manipulation of Valyrian steel, such as records that were killed during the Doom, and the disappearance of art and artifacts known to that world is now lost within the songs of the Doom. In 54 AC, during the reign of King Jaehaerys, his daughter, Princess Aerys Targaryen, disappeared from Dragonstone on the back of her dragon, Balerion the Black Dread. Balerion returned to King's Landing in 56 AC with a dying Aerys. Sept of Bath, who helped Streeter, believed that Balerion had taken her to the ruins of Valyria in his own birthplace. Because of her terrifying state and fearing death, the powerful dragon was also wounded. Jaehaerys, seeing the state of his own daughter and the state of Balerion, unable to fly, he punished any person going to Valyria by death and prohibited ships that had sailed through the Valyria ruins to not be able to dock within Westeros. People believe that Harrenhal was cursed, and Harrenhal was just a small cataclysmic of what Valyria could look like. If everybody felt Harrenhal as much as we fear old Valyria's ruins, what is hiding beneath the depths of old Valyria? Now that is another video that I will get into. What depravities lurk in the shadows? Thank you for watching another video, Watchers Beyond the Wall, and stay tuned to an Aegon's Conquest where Aegon and his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, unite the 7 kingdoms of Westeros because of another dream.